for a more interesting conversation here with Senator Matteo Renzi, former Prime Minister of Italy, and someone who has dealt with both reform and populism. So our session is entitled Reformists versus Populists, the dangers of difficult change. We've spent the morning talking about change and the world order, change in economic trends, but also changes impacting Europe. So I want to start first by asking you, a lot of the discussions we're having at the moment are very nuanced. We're in Ideas Abu Dhabi here at NYUAD. We're talking statistics, transformational changes, demographics, details that most people out there in the world don't want to listen to most of the time. Has populism peaked in the sense that people now want to know more, or is it really too much detail? People are too entrenched in their current polarized views.
First of all, good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. I think that a lot of politicians think the alternative to the populism is reformism, is reform. Reform is the alternative to populism. I think not. It's not easy to describe what is populism. Populism is impossible to describe in terms of policies. What is populism in Brazil or in Venezuela? What is populism in the USA or in Philippines? It's impossible to describe populism starting from policies. But I think we can describe populism as the fear of the future, as Professor said this morning, as the reaction against establishment, with the threat about the ideas. So my personal view is that the real alternative to populism is not reform, is education. Education is the dam against populism. Education is the real way to defend our community from populism. And for that reason, I'm really glad to be here because, of course, Abu Dhabi this year achieved a great result welcoming the Pope, as the Minister said this morning, a great dialogue event, very important, because ideas are the future, but also because New York University, for me, a former Prime Minister, but particularly as former mayor, is a pillar, was a pillar and is a pillar, will be a pillar of construction of community. So, in other words, Mina, if we believe in the education as place, as dam against populism, universities became the most important thing. I came from Florence, and I conclude with that. And in Florence, during the Renaissance age, the best place was the bottega. What is bottega? Bottega means workshop, lab. I see some Italian friends. Maybe workshop is a correct expression. What is the workshop? It's the place in which we can make something very interesting. So, please consider that during the Renaissance age, bottega was the place in which students try to make better the master. Universities today, and the New York University in Abu Dhabi, very great idea, is exactly the same thing. It's the place in which it's important to build a strategy of future, to build an alternative to populism, to create people who will be able to surpass his master. Leonardo da Vinci said that. Sad is the student who don't surpass his master. It's a beautiful quote, I think. And this is also my wish for the great initiative of New York University in Abu Dhabi. When I was Mayor of Florence, New York University changed our community life. And I hope this could be also for you, my friends.
So you speak about the role of universities. Education is the antidote to populism.
Yeah.
And yet we're at a time when everyone is asking, well, what's the future of education? We see so many changes, technological changes, economic changes. You know, you've all heard the statistics. Currently, the majority of children who are just beginning primary school are probably studying for jobs that haven't even been created yet. So how do we deal with that change, that speed of change, without knowing exactly what to predict from the future?
This is a very interesting question also, because in my country, in Italy, in this time, there are a lot of polemics exactly for that. Because the people give this message, oh, the future will be a threat, will be a problem. And particularly the future will be a problem for a lot of fields, migration, integration, but particularly for the job. The idea is with the disruption, technological disruption will destroy every job. And the populist party in my country give this message, don't worry, we will give a lot of money, a salary for everyone without job, without study. It's very easy, because for the protection is good. I'm worried for the future of my children. I have the government to give me the message, don't worry, don't study. I will protect you with the salary. In my view, this is stupid. Because the only way is exactly the opposite. I don't know how many of you have a child in the primary school. But one, two, well, I think more than two, I hope. I finished. I tried to stop with my children. 3 years, enough. But your children will have a job, if today stay in the primary school, which probably in 2/3, 66%, will be a job of today doesn't exist. So, a classroom of 24 children, 8 will do a job who today exists. But 16 will have a job who doesn't exist. What is the only way, exactly about your consideration about the acceleration of change? We will have a new world in front of us. This is not a choice. This is a shore. This is a pillar. We will have a new world in front of us. The only way we prepare our children with education and with the forma mentis, this is a Latin expression, the mentality, the status of mind, to give a message, please, don't worry. Populism gives exactly the opposite message. There are a problem of migration. Oh, you have to be worried because the world will destroy us. The robot will bring our job. But if you think about the past, also in the UK, Laddist movement, or maybe during Renaissance, during Middle Age, the monk in the ancient priest in Europe used to copy the book. When arrived the print of the machine, everything changed. And they think, oh, the world will change us. No, the world changed. And we will have the possibility to give an alternative to message of fear. This is the difference between populism and education, in my view.
But agreed. However, I will push back and only say there's also, we can say there are positive things, absolutely we will change positively, but at the same time there is an acceptance that globalization, the last 20, 30 years, while, as we heard in the first session, raised a lot of people out of poverty, it also left some behind.
Yeah.
And maybe in Europe and America more than in other countries. And we see wealth inequalities also rising. So part of it is about fear of jobs, but also now we can see how the world lives through Instagram and Facebook and everything else. And you realize what you don't have much more than before. So as wealth gaps increase, and as there's a sense of globalization didn't benefit everybody, how do you change that momentum beyond saying that the populists are wrong to only breed fear?
This is a question very important for Europe in this moment, in this time. Europe lost the last 10 years to discuss about red tape of bureaucracy, stupid rules, and in the same time, the world changed deeply. Professor this morning explained us the numbers between the relation between Africa and Europe. Well, it's unbelievable. What is the reaction of European politicians? Give a message of fear for migration. Arrive at boats with 50, 60 people who come from Eritrea and from Libya arrive in Italy, and Italian politicians and Italian populist politicians used to say, oh, there is an invasion. 50 people who escaped from war, who risked their life, who had a lot of problems. At the same time, Chinese government, exactly in the same hours in which our populist politician used to write on Instagram and on Facebook, we have an invasion because there are 60 people on the boat from Eritrea. In the same hour, I remember very well, Xi Jinping, president of a Chinese Republic, invited 52 head of states and the government of Africa and signed an agreement of $60 billion. 60 people in the boat, invasion. $60 billion as a message to create a strategy for migration. This is a symbol, an example. My view is that our problem today is the lack of vision for Europe. Because they come back to Chinese empire, maybe it's too much, but the Chinese presence, Asia role, it's clear. Africa will be in the next 25 years the double of today. Nigeria will become the third country after China and India. A lot of communities in Africa, particularly if they will be able to fight against corruption, will be maybe the best places for investment. Europe, what is Europe? Europe is a great success of the past. I'm really proud to be European. I'm Florentine. I'm Florentine with the Italian passport, but a citizen of Europe. At the same time, what is Europe for my son? Because my grandson went to Paris, not to Paris, to France to make war against French people. My son will be in France for Erasmus. This is an historical revolution, very good, very beautiful, but it's sufficient. It's enough for the future? I think not. We need a soul for the Europe of today. And to build that, we have to stop the stupid discussion of today. We continue to speak only about rules, fiscal compact, deficit, budget, and now with Brexit. Because it's fun. I very appreciated my friend Gordon Brown, who was an unbelievable friend and leader, and he was able to don't speak about Brexit. Yeah, and I'm very appreciated. But
how does Brexit look from Italy, from a European perspective?
I joke. Yeah, 2 days ago I joke. My friend Kaldu knows because we spoke about it. I joke with Tony Blair because I grew up with the idea of British politicians as a model. Well, please, Bill, think about Winston Churchill. And for me, also to Tony Blair, the third way, wonderful. I grew up with the idea, British politicians are the best of the world. So now I saw the Brexit, and I think it's a similar Italian organization. I felt my home at home. It's unbelievable. I visited Westminster, and I felt oh, this is Roma. This is no problem, a chaos. Jokes apart, this is a problem because if we have a great world with 9 billion people in the next 25 years, with the Chinese very great investment in intelligence, artificial intelligence, with the Internet of Things, we change deeply our society, our community. Please, in 2015, the number of things connected to the net was more or less 2 billion of things. Now, in 2020, more correctly, will be 25 things connected to the world. This means big data. This means algorithm. This means a future totally different. What is the role of Europe in that? I think invest in ideas, in the value, in the culture. And the real challenge also for security is not continue to consider migration a problem for the boat with 40 or 60 people in the Mediterranean, But understand, in the banlieue, in the suburbs of the cities, we are a great danger for our community if we don't invest in education. The problem is not the close, the Sicily and Calabria on the south of Italy. The problem is open museum, open theater, open school, open music hall. This is the real role of Europe. But Europe today, speaking only about red tape of bureaucracy. And China invests in artificial intelligence. Some of us invest in natural stupidity, not in artificial intelligence. This is the problem.
Okay, I have two questions.
It's a joke, my friend, it's a joke.
I have two questions to follow up from that. So the first is China. We've just seen Italy sign up for Belt and Road Initiative after Europe and the US had really been pushing back against it. So what's the thinking behind that? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's inevitable?
Oh, okay, now I'm a member of opposition in my country. So the government is a government I didn't support. I'm a member of parliament, but I vote against this government. At the same time, let me be very frank with you. I was the prime minister who, for the first, who tried with Xi Jinping in some meetings in China and also in Sardinia to prepare Belt and Road Initiative and the presence of Europe in the Belt and Road Initiative. So my opinion is Belt and Road Initiative is a signal of great vision from Xi Jinping. And we have to respect for that. I think it's not a problem if Italy sign an agreement. The problem is a very internal problem, the lack of Italian strategy with the rest of Europe. It's very complicated and, okay, right or wrong is my country, so I defend my government only here. Please, let me be very clear. The question is different. What is the strategy in the relation with Europe from China, and what is the strategy of a relation with China from Europe? And there is, unfortunately, I'm forced to speak well about France and not Italy, and so only for that. Emmanuel Macron understood that. Italian government signed an agreement Saturday morning, but Macron, who hosts Xi Jinping for the state dinner Sunday night in Nice, prepared an agreement not only more important than us in terms of money, with a lot of money, but also in agreement with the presence of Angela Merkel and Jean-Claude Juncker in Paris yesterday. So this is the message about the relation with China. The relation with China is obviously a priority for everyone. It's a priority here. It's a priority for this part of the world. It's a priority for USA. Personally, I think Donald Trump will sign an agreement about trade in the next weeks with Xi Jinping. This is my personal forecast. I am not sure, but I think that will happen. And this will be very positive also for the GDP around the world. So I hope that happens, because it's better an agreement than a problem. But the question is the modality of agreement between Europe and China. Europe is a collage, a puzzle of 27, 28, we don't know. Brexit is in the tunnel.
Still 28, yeah. Please, for the Brits here.
I hope, but you are in the tunnel in this moment between France and the UK. The problem is an agreement between Europe and China. It's necessary. We need that. It's better to do together and not alone, as the Italian government made last Saturday.
The subhead of this session, our discussion here, is the dangers of difficult change. When you came to power in Italy, you had many difficult changes to make. You got great praise from abroad. This is somebody who can bring about reforms that are necessary, changes that are necessary. But at the same time, you had a lot of difficulties internally, political, and also explaining to people the necessary difficult changes. You've spoken now about vision, having a long-term vision. But this is about long-termism and short-termism. And here, when we're sitting in the UAE, when we're looking from the region at the world, there is this question about the inability to make long-term decisions, partly because government changes, I think Italy now, since the end of the Second World War, has had 66 governments. Is that correct?
No, exaggerate. 65.
65. Well, maybe I'm preempting the next change.
First meeting as Prime Minister with Obama, with the President Obama. I'm Democrat, so I consider Obama a very important leader. So when I met him in a summit, international summit, President Obama, it's a pleasure to me. Oh, perfect, Matteo, I'm really happy we will work together. Okay, first discussion, Libya. First of all, congratulations to Sheikh Mohammed for the great agreement between Libya and this country now work very, very good. But come back to first meeting with Obama. And Barack, this is our priority for Italy. But Matteo, I know, we have a lot of problems with Libya. They change the government every year. And they look at me. 63 prime minister in 70 years. Oh, sorry, Matteo, this is for Libya, not for you. No, don't worry, Mama. Don't worry.
But it is a problem. It is a problem in terms of constant change.
Please consider that. My government, my longevity was 3 years. So in the benchmark, in the European benchmark, is very little government. In Italy, in the last century, is the third. No, 4, because there is also Mussolini. But Mussolini is not a good benchmark.
We don't talk about
Mussolini cracks it, Berlusconi. 3 better than with more longevity than me. So I lost my job for that. Because, sure, I know you smile, but unfortunately it's true. I lost my job because I tried to change the constitution to give stability for 5 years.
Right.
And I tried to give stability, and the reaction was I lost my job. Not a very good idea.
So to the point is
I founded a club with David Cameron against the referendum because I lost for referendum. Now the difference is David decided to make a referendum.
Yeah.
I was forced to constitution. So David will be the president of club against the referendum. I will be the deputy president.
So going back to the idea of difficult change, as you said, that's the danger of making a bold move, trying to make a long-term change at a time when you have either populist movements, or if you take things to referenda, as we're seeing in Brexit, as we saw in your case, plebiscite democracy, so to speak, doesn't always work. So how do you strike the balance of long-term vision when you have short-term realities in terms of election cycles?
I think this is a great problem for Western community. And I remember a very good speech here in New York University of Nicolas Sarkozy, just some months ago, very interesting. This is the role of university. It's very important, and particularly your university. What is the check and balance between democracy, which is crucial for our value, and long-term vision? Because let me be very clear, Italy, it's too much. Or 65 government in 72 years is too much. But if you think about the possibility to create a strategy for medium term, in the long term we will be every died, as Keynes said, but medium term and brief term, particularly today. If I control now my mobile, my dictatorship is the social media. The priority for populists is not grow up in terms of jobs, it's grow up in terms of followers. Unbelievable that. And everything I said is in the instant poll, instant message, Instagram. And this dictatorship of instant, it's very dangerous for a vision of medium term. So try a check and balance about it. It's not easy. And I think nobody in Europe achieved that result. The best period in some countries was a period of stability. In Germany with Angela Merkel, in UK with Tony Blair. The period of 8 years government in USA. But we need some of new. And in this case, I mean, I think the problem for Europe is the lack of a good institution. You, when you started this morning, you remember an expression of Francis Fukuyama about the end of history, the Professor Fukuyama. There is a new expression of Professor Fukuyama, very interesting, is vetocracy, the power of veto. This is true for USA politics in the book of Fukuyama. In my view, it's particularly true in Europe. Everyone could block order in Europe. And if you think about the necessity of vision, and everyone could block the order, this is the great problem of Western communities in that period. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, is the reason of grow up of this part of the world and the Asia. And Russia, the leadership, very important. When the leadership in this country, in those countries are brilliant, you achieve a result. And in Europe, this is impossible. This is a great question. And I don't speak about our dinner with Xi Jinping, as Khaldun told me this morning. It's our secret.
Well, you know, one of the things I always try to explain to people is that what the UAE has is legitimacy by competence. People want to see that their governments and their leaders deliver. And through that, you get your legitimacy.